In Cuba, polling stations opened for Sunday's parliamentary elections. President Díaz-Canel exercised his right to vote and expressed confidence in the island's democratic process. In France, the government refuses to hold dialogues with the unions on the pension reform adopted on Monday despite broad national rejection. And in Israel, demonstrations against the government's judicial reform continue to grow. Thousands took to the streets for a 12th consecutive week. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Luis Alberto Matos from the TeleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. Cuba is holding on Sunday, March 26, parliamentary elections to elect 470 deputies to the National Assembly of People's Power, who will lead from the legislature the destinies of the country for a term of 5 years. The voting process will take place in 23,648 polling stations that open at 7 a.m. and will close at 6 p.m. local hours. Candidates must obtain more than 50% of the valid votes cast to be elected as deputies to Parliament. Those elected will be in charge of electing the President and Vice President of the Republic and continue with the legislative development in accordance with the Constitution. The 10th legislature to the National Assembly, which will be constituted next April 19th, will be comprised of 135 deputies less than in the previous legislative period, 221 of them proposed from the municipalities, 135 from the provinces, and 114 of national origin. In statements to the press after exercising his right to vote in the 44th constituency of the city of Santa Clara, Cuban President Miguel Díaz-Canel stressed that the elections are an act of defense against foreign aggressions.
I believe that the Cuban people today are fulfilling their duty. They are exercising a citizen's right, but they are also fulfilling a duty as revolutionaries and as Cubans. We are defending the future from the present. We are defending the revolution. We are defending socialism. We are defending the homeland. And we Cubans are defending ourselves from so many aggressions and so much hatred. Even today, social networks abroad, not in Cuba. In Cuba, hashtags and feelings are different, but social networks are full of boycott threats. Our enemies are threatening to go to every website. They are threatening with cyber attacks and with spreading a lot of lies too. They have not achieved any of that, and one wonders, well, if our elections are so bad, as they say, if they represent so little, why are our enemies so worried about them?
President Díaz-Canel also assured the holding of these elections was achieved through a process of popular participation and through democracy.
Therefore, we arrived at this moment, and for that reason I apologize for not having explained this before answering the question exactly. We arrived at these elections as part of a truly democratic exercise, of meeting with the people, of popular participation, where the will to listen, the opportunity to listen has prevailed, where people have been able to raise all their concerns and also renew the commitments, renew the attitudes, renew the thinking about the way in which we should approach a group of issues.
In the second informative report of the National Electoral Council issued at 11 a.m. on Sunday, the Vice President of that body, Tomás Amarán Díaz, informed that up to 9 a.m., 1,473,515 voters had voted. The figure represents 18.15% of the basic electoral roll of 8,120,072 voters. Amarán said that no incidents have been reported and commented that, in general, the population is showing an influence in an organized and disciplined manner. As expected, 23,468 polling stations are operating throughout the country in 12,427 precincts. The Vice President of the Electoral Authority said that the next news will take place at 1 p.m. on the national news broadcast on Cuban TV and will contain the voting report until 11 a.m. The polling stations will remain open until 6 p.m. this Sunday. The 28th Ibero-American Summit in the Dominican Republic concluded with the approval of the Santo Domingo Declaration. The declaration reaffirms the right of each people to choose and build freely in peace, stability, and justice its political, economic, and social system and its institutions. It also advocates relations based on sovereignty and non-interference. The declaration rejects the application of the Helms-Burton Act, the tightening of the blockade, and the financial persecution against Cuba, and requested the exclusion of the island from the list of countries sponsoring terrorism. It also recognizes the need to promote mechanisms that strengthen the participation and empowerment of all peoples, valuing the contribution of indigenous peoples and Afro-descendants. The Mexican government announced last year the creation of the company Litio MX, and just in February of this year announced the nationalization of the mineral due to its importance. Our correspondent Daniel Rosas with more details.
The so-called nearshoring is considered an opportunity for Mexico, especially in lithium mining, due to its proximity to one of the largest markets in the presence of the Asian giant.
But it becomes more strategic just because we are very close to the United States, and also because we already had a Chinese company here. We already had a strong company here, a Chinese company. So this decision to have modified the mining law is very important.
Although Mexico does not have the largest reserves of the mineral, it does have more than 240,000 hectares now declared a mining reserve zone on the borders with the United States. This is why lithium was nationalized, which will represent profits for the country.
Now, the state is the one that will receive the benefits of mining income, in particular if this exploitation and transformation is carried out in the future. And we insist the most important thing is the value chain.
According to the U.S. Geological Survey, the price per ton of lithium carbonate rose from $8,400 in 2020 to $85,000 by the end of 2022.
80% of the lithium in the world, of all the global lithium, is used for batteries, and fundamentally these batteries are for electric cars and also for the electronic devices that we use, cell phones, tablets, and other devices, but fundamentally for the batteries of electric cars.
Hence, the strategy of Mexico is focused on the exploitation of the mineral to be used in the manufacture of electric cars. This is evidenced by the announcement of Tesla about the installation of facilities in the country, adding to other countries such as Germany, the Netherlands, China, and Canada.
We are very excited to announce that we will be building a gigafactory in Mexico.
Unlike in South American countries where lithium is found in brine, in Mexico it is found in clay, which would mean a different extraction process, one that Tesla has apparently already patented. But Mexico seeks to keep the benefits of lithium in national hands from the outset, unlike what happened with oil in the past. For this reason, the government announced the nationalization.
So that it cannot be exploited by foreigners. Neither from Russia, nor China, nor from the United States. Oil and lithium belong to the nation. They belong to the people of Mexico.
So far, the clearest route that Mexico has to take advantage of this mineral is to supply it for the manufacture of batteries for electric cars. Until last year, the Mexican authorities only had reports of exploration and not exploitation.
Daniel Rosas, TeleSUR, Ciudad de México.
Let's take a short break, but first remember you can follow us on TikTok at the account of TeleSUR English, in which you will be able to see news in different formats, news updates, and much more. Other stories coming up, stay with us. Welcome back from the South. We now have more details on Cuba's parliamentary elections with our correspondent Bayan Belén de los Santos from Havana.
a day of joy and democracy in Cuba, as over 23,600 polling stations have opened at 7 a.m. all over the country to elect the 470 members of the 10th legislature of the National Assembly of the People's Power for the coming 5 years. So far, the National Electoral Council has informed that up to 9 a.m. local time, over 1,470,000 Cubans had already casted their ballots. This is 18.15% of the electorate. The level of participation is one of the most relevant factors to be taken into account for these elections, considering that the vote in Cuba is optional, although the island has a long history of high levels of popular participation. The atmosphere at the polling stations have been reported to be good, as voting day is going on very calmly. In Havana, 72 deputies from the 15 municipalities that make up the city are running for the National Assembly of the People's Power, of which 44 are women and 28 are men. Let's remember that if the new composition of the National Assembly is confirmed in this Sunday's elections, the Cuban Parliament will continue to be the second legislative body with the highest presence of women in the world, after Rwanda. Another relevant fact about the candidates is in these elections is the important percentage of young people. Just earlier today, Cuban President Díaz-Canel mentioned in his statements from the city of Santa Clara, where he cast his vote, the importance of the presence of young people for the Cuban democracy. For these elections, a little more than 20% of the total of 407 candidates are under 35 years of age, and in the case of Havana, 13 of the 72 candidates for deputies belong to this age group. We will continue to closely follow the course of the election day, as the polling stations are to remain open until 6 p.m. local time. From Havana, Cuba, I'm Belén de los Santos for TeleSUR English.
Thank you, Willen. We'll stay in touch. The French government refused to hold dialogues with the unions on the pension reform adopted on Monday, despite broad national rejection of this law. The presidential spokesman, Olivier Véran, made a rebuttal to recent declarations of President Emmanuel Macron, who ruled out negotiations on this without a parliamentary vote, which raised the discontent of the unions and the opposition. Véran specified that the executive is ready to talk with the unions about other essential issues, such as the management of the end of careers, professional retraining, and the revaluation of salaries. President Macron's declarations come during the wave of violence in the mobilizations and 2 days after the 10th National Day of Protests. On Sunday, the organizers of the demonstration against the construction of a giant water storage facilities, which led to clashes this Saturday in Saint-Solin, southwest France, denounced the violence of the police. According to the latest figures from the prosecutor's office, 7 demonstrators were injured, including 3 who had to be taken to hospitals. The alliance of activist groups behind the protest said 200 of their numbers had been injured, and one of them was fighting for his life. 11 people were detained after police seized cold weapons, including petanque balls and meat knives, as well as explosives. While not directly related to the anti-pensions reform campaign, the clashes over the water reservoir construction have added to tensions in an increasingly challenging situation for the government, which is bracing for another difficult day on Tuesday, when unions are due to hold another round of strikes and protests.
According to our medical teams, 200 people were injured on the silence of the demonstrators. Among these 200 injured people, there are 40 serious injuries. Among these 40 serious injuries, there are 20 people whose functional prognosis is engaged, who are mutilated, some disfigured, as a result of the use of these offensive grenades and these weapons of war on the demonstrators. So, 200 injured, 20 people mutilated, disfigured, whose functional prognosis is engaged, and 1 person to date in intensive care, whose vital prognosis is engaged.
Over 2,000 migrants disembarked on Saturday on the southern Italian island of Lampedusa, which marks a record of arrivals to that location. Italian Coast Guard reported that 43 boats arrived on Friday to that island, the southernmost point of the peninsula, with 1,778 people, and on Saturday morning, another 6 boats arrived with 267 migrants in the Imbriacola reception center alone, which could only house less than 400 people, there are 1,831 new arrivals, a serious overcrowding already common in this fourth quarter of 2023. Most migrants come from Guinea, Ivory Coast, Cameroon, Burkina Faso, Gambia, and Niger, and only 25 from Tunisia so far. On Saturday, President Vladimir Putin said that Moscow and Minsk agreed to deploy tactical nuclear weapons on the territory of Belarus. The Russian head of state said that the deployment will not violate international non-proliferation commitments. According to the president, the move comes after the UK announced it would supply depleted uranium ammunition to Ukraine. President Putin declared, setting aside the present circumstances, that such deployment had long been requested by Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko. Authorities added that the construction of the storage facility to house such arsenal will be completed on July 1st. Vladimir Putin indicated that the U.S. has been doing the same for decades on the territory of 6 of its European NATO allies: Germany, Turkey, the Netherlands, Belgium, Italy, and Greece. TeleSUR English continues to grow. You can now tune in from 33 different African countries through StarSat, dial 461, and enjoy our Latin American alternative broadcast. One final short break, and we'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back from the South. In Israel, demonstrations against judicial reform continue to grow. A wave of protests against the measure has been going on for 12 weeks now. On Saturday, Israeli citizens mobilized again in different parts of the country against the judicial reform promoted by Benjamin Netanyahu's government, which, according to the demonstrators, threatens the division of powers and democracy. During this day, there were clashes with police forces and several people were reported to have been arrested. The day was marked by Defense Minister Yoav Gallant's public request for a halt to the controversial legislation, becoming the first member of Netanyahu's government to do so. The president of Chad, General Mahamat Idris Deby Itno, pardoned 380 rebels of the Front for Alternation and Concord in Chad, who had been sentenced to life imprisonment on Tuesday. Justice had convicted the insurgents for participating in an attack, as a result of which Idris' father was killed in April 2021. The Chadian president signed the pardon yesterday, but it did not include the leader of the rebel group, Mahamat Ali Mahdi, also sentenced to life imprisonment. A total of 420 members of the Front for Alternation and Concord in Chad were sentenced to life imprisonment, accused of terrorism, minors recruitment, and attacks against state security. In Pakistan, former Prime Minister Imran Khan and supporters of the Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf Party held a massive rally in Lahore amidst a judicial campaign against the former premier. The now main opposition leader held a rally after appearing in court on Friday following the suspension of an arrest warrant against him, which allowed him to end a days-long detention at his residence. According to the rally organizers, police set up multiple barricades to discourage crowds from participating in the rally, while media coverage was blocked by government pressure. The former Prime Minister was ousted by a non-confidence vote last year and has been involved in more than 100 legal cases seeking to imprison him, while campaigning for early elections.
We are here to support Imran Khan and his vision. He's like one of the great leaders, and he has the vision to support us and all the mafias here. They have surrounded our country. So we are here to protect our country from them.
The main thing for us to be here is that we want our institutions, including our judiciary, to know that the elections that are withheld by the Election Commission, they are going to be held. at no cost.
Since Sunday, some 500 Spanish troops are fighting the first major forest fire of the year located in the provinces of Castellón and Teruel in the Valencian community. The fire is spreading through the east of the country and is affecting some 3,800 hectares, as a result of which hundreds of people are being evacuated. The head of emergencies of the Valencian community, Jose Maria Angela, shared that during the night, the ground troops worked around a fire perimeter of about 40 kilometers, and early in the morning, 16 aircraft joined the firefighting actions. Some 1,750 people were evacuated from their homes in the area. Heavy rains have left more than 30,000 people affected in the Brazilian Amazon, hitting the state of Acre with greater intensity. Floods have caused landslides and blocked streets and highways, so the ministers of Integration and the Environment are visiting the areas. The municipalities of Rio Branco, Assis Brasil, Brasilia, and Epitacalandia were declared in a state of emergency by the federal government. Authorities stated medium and long-term measures are to be implemented so the population can recover as fast as possible and reduce the number of fatalities every year. Authorities also are working tirelessly to evacuate those who might be at risk. We have come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. You can also join us on social media: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For TeleSUR English, I'm Luis Alberto Matos. Thank you for watching.